Hello all and welcome to my video explanation on how to make a Delphiniform oil lamp. Here you will see me making the original and making the mold and then making a new lamp from the mold. So here I am slapping the clay into center, getting ready to start centering the clay on the wheel head. This will be used to make the body of the lamp. Clay I'm using is a red clay called Oregon Brown. It fires to cone 5, which is right around 2000 degrees. Since this is such a small ball of clay and I have large hands, it is a bit difficult to get this centered, and I want to make sure it's absolutely perfect because this piece will be turned into a mold. The slightest imperfections could end up showing in the later pieces. You can see me moving the clay up and down and up and down. That is to help center the clay on the wheel head, as well as get the clay molecules aligned for throwing. Satisfied with how centered it is, I am now opening the well with my thumbs and starting to spread the body open. I know the shape I'm going for, so I'm trying to just throw the piece into that shape instead of normally what we would do is throw a cylinder and then shape it afterwards. I have a size that I'm going for, and I use the ruler to help get that size. So you'll see me using that ruler a lot through this video. Just minor adjustments here and there, trimming off some more off the rim because it's obviously way too tall, and collaring in the rim. Just cleaning out the water from the inside of the piece now, and collaring some more. As you can see, the collaring I'm doing is shrinking the hole at the top, and I'll be shrinking it down to the point of how large the hole would need to be for the oil to be added in. This hole right here will end up being the filling hole. As I collar, the clay wall gets thicker, so I'm just making sure that I keep it nice and thin. Some more collaring and making the overall body shorter. One more check of the height and the width. And checking the height again. Now I'm going to drop the filling well in. This will act like a funnel so that all the oil ends up in the lamp. And now I'm undercutting, so I have less to trim off later. Removing all that excess clay, and now I'm done throwing the body. Now we're on to decorating and shaping. So here you see the piece has been trimmed, and I have put a nice leaf motif stamp into the top. I have a large ball of clay here, which was too large, so I got rid of it, and now I'm using a much smaller piece. Hand building is not exactly what I'm best at, so making this spout took several attempts and rechecking the source material. You can see I'm just kind of shaping and smoothing. I'm trying to keep the clay from cracking as best I can, and I'll be measuring it quite a bit. I had to borrow a friend's phone because my phone was being used to film this. And that's what we're going for. Having that source material there helped out a lot. And I needed to start over because I didn't like the way it was going. And starting over again. These spouts had spatulated rim tips on them, and that was just something that the Romans found highly pleasing and was used for a very, very long time on Roman oil lamps. And I wasn't exactly sure how to do that, but I took some knowledge that I have from sword making and just flattened the tip out with between my thumb and forefinger. And now I'm going to be attaching the spout to the body. I'm just adding some liquid clay called slip, which works really well as glue to hold my pieces together, and I'm scoring through that with a needle tool. And attaching, and then I just smooth the spout into the body. And I'm going to have to cover up some of those stamps that I made, but that's okay. I'll go over it with the stamp in a few minutes and correct that. Checking the length again, and there's that stamp that I had used. And I noticed that the handle was getting in the way, so I had to use it with just my fingers, which worked out as I was able to get a lot better detail that way. View of the stamping. Now I'm cleaning off my throwing stick, so I'm going to use it to incise a couple extra lines just for some more decoration. This is something that I found common on many of these Delphiniform lamps, was they had leaf motifs and incised lines. Now I'm pulling out my hole punch, and I'm looking for the smallest one I have, and that would be it. And as you can see, it is far too large. So I will have to use my needle tool and a knife later to cut those out. And here are some pictures of the mold while it was being made. I didn't take video of this because the process is rather boring to watch, and I really didn't have anywhere good to set up the camera. If you would like to learn more about the actual mold making process, I would recommend you look up some videos on YouTube. But what I did was I used one of my bats, sealed up a well, and then poured the plaster in. I poured a base layer for the piece to sit on, then poured more plaster on top of that. Once that hardened, I poured the last layer on top. Now you can see me pressing the slab of clay into the mold. I would have taken video of actually opening the mold, but I didn't think it would be that interesting. But it turned out to be interesting, and I needed a hammer to open it up. So all I'm doing now is I'm cutting away the excess clay from pressing it into the mold, and I'm trying to build up a large, thick lip at the top so that the top and the bottom will have something to hold on to each other by. And just making sure I get that clay really pressed into the mold so it picks up all those little details, like my throwing lines from when I actually threw the piece, and the trimming lines, and all those little imperfections. And for some reason I was very fastidious about trying to keep the mold clean. Bottom side is done, and now we're going to do the top side. And I'm just pressing the clay together to make a big enough slab to fit. And now pressing that top one in. Same process as the bottom, press it in really well, tear away the excess, and build up a strong lip. Again, I'm just smoothing the inside, really pressing it into the details, and then building up that lip. And of course, cleaning up my plaster along the way. And now I'm scoring, and I'll be slipping the two halves so that they connect a little bit better. So this one unfortunately did not make it, as you'll see here in just a few minutes why. And I learned a lot from my professor on how to actually make press molds work better. And here you can see that it is stuck to the inside. And I am trying to wiggle it free with my fingers, trying to pull it out. And eventually I will get my needle tool out and my throwing stick and start poking at it, trying to get it to release from the mold. Why it's not releasing is there's an undercut in the spout area, and that was preventing the piece from actually popping out as easily. Also, that top bit of plaster was still pretty wet, so the clay along it would still be quite wet and it wouldn't have shrunk away from the plaster, which was also hindering it from popping out as easily. You can see I'm trimming away some of the excess clay, trying to get underneath the body to pop it out. And now I'm using the needle, and I end up getting a little carried away with the needle and cutting it at a few points deeper than I should. And when cutting away doesn't work, I try slapping it out. Little extra bits of clay there. More poking and prodding and pushing. And it comes free. Lots of cleaning that would have been needed to do that if I decided to keep that one. I did not. So here we are at home, and I have two now, and I'm using my needle tool to perforate an area for me to cut with my kitchen paring knife, where I will be cutting out the opening for the wick hole at the end of the spout and the filling hole in the middle of the body. So I'd already done the first one, so I learned how to do this. And it just takes a lot of cleaning and cutting. going back and forth with the knife, to the needle tool, to the knife, to the fettling end of the throwing stick. And there's the first hole. And now I'm perforating the hole for the filling end of the body, right in the middle of the well that we made to act as a funnel. And cutting that out, and I cut a little too far, and now I need to patch that up with some clay. And there's that cut I accidentally made. Fortunately, the clay was soft enough still that I was able to patch it fairly easily. Distracted by television that my girlfriend had on. And there's the fixed hole. I found the only way to check to make sure everything was working was by blowing into both of the holes separately. Now I'm using the large end of my trimming tool to trim away some of that excess clay on the edges, just cleaning it up, making it look a lot nicer. This is what I did to the first one as well, but it was already done by the time I started filming.